So my
Time to
co-teachers,
begin.
when you
It's all right.
when I get to that
Okay.
point, later for sharing, you can just volunteer, and I'll say just a few minutes. We'll just see where the time is at. And you can definitely share your screen as well. Hi, Esther. Hi, Ariani.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, hello.
Hello, wonderful teachers. Joel, Larissa,
Hello.
Luis Marte. Great to see you, Luis. And Conrado. Mi amigo
Hello, class.
Hi, Miss
Hello,
Laura. How are
everybody.
you?
Nice to see you, Karina, Jorge Luis,
Nice to see you
Tinio,
there.
Dennis, Adelis Gil, Betania, Orenson,
Oh,
Roque,
hello, God bless you.
Maciel, Inoelia, Doris Bell, Rosario, Miguel
Good afternoon.
Alberto, Maria Marmolejos. I love that name.
Nice Spanish, Laura.
That's such a good.
Marmolejos.
Oh my God, that's such a
Wow,
great name.
that sounded great. Marmolejos. That's a
It
great
just sounds like
sound.
mermelada to me. It just sounds so delicious.
This
I love-
R sounds like a Dominican R.
I'm going to get a lot of education from you all. I can't wait to eventually be there, and you can help me with my Spanish. Laura, I know my Laura Liriano. That I know how to say, Laura. Connie,
Of course.
Good
Joel,
afternoon. Good
good
afternoon,
afternoon, Glenny,
Laura.
Ambrosina, Ezequiel.
Hello.
Wonderful.
Hi, everyone.
There's Loide, Mariolka, Ana Cabrera,
Hello.
Rosaida, Kenny, Lucrecia, Jasiri. There's so many beautiful friends here. Wonderful to see everyone. Wonderful to see everyone. I'm going to give my colleagues a chance to say hello, because sometimes I just rush right in to start talking, and I don't give them a chance to say hello to everyone. So it is August 9th, and August is such a precious time for teachers when we have a little time before the new year starts. So I'm just going to check in with my colleagues and have them tell you where they will be teaching, what they will be teaching in the new school year, and any thoughts they have about their new school year coming up. So I'm going to just start with, how about Christine?
Sure. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Christine.
I will be working with adults this fall. I will be working with teachers of English in my region, which is outside of New York City, about 20 miles north. And I will be providing professional development and training to teachers who are looking to improve their literacy education. And so these teachers work with students who are anywhere from 6 years old to 21 years old, all across our region. And I work in several different districts.
Yay. Christine does a lot of teacher education work, and especially literacy. And sometimes people think only about New York City, but of course we're a very large, just like Santo Domingo doesn't just end, it kind of keeps spreading. That's like New York City. And Christine, how do teachers right now feel about coming back into school with the COVID situation a little bit more increasing here in the US again? Any thoughts about this from your teachers?
Yeah, I think teachers are nervous. They're worried about the variant, and they are worried about their students' mental health and mental well-being. They feel that many students will come back having experienced intense trauma over the last year, and mental health will be a huge priority. I know one district I work with, they said their entire September is going to be focused on the mental health of their teachers and their students.
Yes, thank you for saying that. The mental health piece, we've been with you now. This is session 9, and we have just been charging through week to week, and you all have been with us. And like Laura said, a blessed team we are. We are so glad to continue to share each other's energy, because it gets very hard as a teacher when you're by yourself thinking about, oh my gosh, what is it going to be? How will my students be? How will my families be? How will I be? Or my own children? There's a lot of stress still for teachers. It's not over, but we continue to be very strong, and we get a lot of strength in our community. So thank you, Christine. Let me jump to Galia. What's what's your year looking like this September?
So I will be in 12th grade still, and I'm the literacy teacher on my team, but I'm also doing my administrative license. And so I'm also doing that in my school, like I'm interning, I'm doing my internship. And similar to Christine, our school is planning the first 3 weeks of September to just dedicate it to SEL, socio-emotional learning. And as part of my internship, I'm kind of like running our school's community. We named it the CWB, Community Wellbeing Committee. So I'm kind of spearheading that this year. And I've been kind of planning that this month, and planning out what September is going to look like for our school.
Wow, Galia, that's really impressive, that the school recognizes that students really have a big transition to make. And just to start, we're going to talk today about starting with the end in mind. And sometimes we just jump right into the weeds, into the grass, into the details, and we don't think big. And it's so important to think about not just what students will learn, but how they will learn. What are the conditions that we need to establish? As we've talked about, the culture of schools, the culture of your classroom. You can do anything and learn anything, as you know, with your students when you have that trust and respect and that community. So thank you for that, Galia. That sounds really interesting. I'm curious what you all will do to organize some of what you'll organize for your kids. How about Frederick?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'll be continuing as an English language teacher and trainer in the middle school in Harlem, where I've taught for 11 years. During the summer, it's been traditional that everyone just turns off their email from school and just, zones out. So I don't know what the teachers at school think, but in about 10 days, I'm going to be one of the small team of teachers going back to put the desks together and have everything ready for the school year. So I'll know better what they all think once we get together.
Yeah, a good break is also needed at times. Yeah. And there's a lot of, there's always that excitement and a bit of mystery when you're coming back to a school year, a new school year, but really this year there's a lot unknown. So I know you'll be great at helping the teachers kind of work together, thinking about the English learners in that situation.
Yeah, some of them have been texted me over the summer. They really miss school. They want to go back. Yeah. And they're asking me things like, do we still wear uniform? And, when exactly are we coming back? So they're excited to come back.
Yeah. Yeah. The kids, kids might talk about they don't want to be in school and they like a vacation, but really they do like to be in school, even if they don't want to admit it sometimes. Okay, awesome. How about Leanne?
Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well today. So next year I will be teaching 6th grade English language arts, as well as 6th grade, or we're rolling out a new kind of plan for our English language learners. I work at a bilingual Spanish English school in East Harlem, and we're going to be separating the students for English as a new language classes by their levels as opposed to their grades. So we'll have like an entering and emerging, like the beginners, 6th and 7th grade together cohort, and then transitioning expanding group. And so we're going to be rolling out a new curriculum that myself and a small team of English teachers at my school, we've been working with a linguist from the CUNY system. Her name's Ingrid. She's great. So we've been rolling out this new so I'm gonna share that later tonight.
Great. That's great. And it's good, I think, for the teachers here, our Dominican colleagues, to see that we're not, we may be in a different setting than you for teaching English, but we all have expertise and we all are always learning. There is no person who knows everything about everything that there is to know. And teachers here do have the benefit of a lot of support from universities. And to be able to connect to the latest research and get someone who researches language to come to your school and really look at what you're doing, your curriculum, is a wonderful opportunity. Okay, I'm going to just jump to Sarah now, if Sarah's there.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yay. I know I'm on a very small computer sitting outside on top of my router, literally. So I'm not moving, and so I'm not touching anything tonight. So sorry if I don't see everybody right away. Go ahead.
Fingers crossed for your internet. Since I work in adult ESL, I haven't really had the summer off in the way that a lot of teachers do, but we are gearing up for our next cycle, as we call them, of classes. So, handling enrollment, sort of rebriefing and retraining the teacher volunteers that I work with, continuing to evaluate the curriculum. We're also currently trying to figure out if it would make sense to go back in person and trying to find space for that. The organization that I work at has expanded a lot during the pandemic, and we have a much bigger E&L program actually now than we did when the pandemic started, because we were able to increase enrollment because we didn't have space constraints. It was all online. So now we're currently looking at how can we continue reaching as many students while bringing people back into the physical classroom, because overall, we still believe that the in-person instruction is more effective. So we're currently on a space hunt, and I'm very excited about that. But we'll see how it works with city funding, and New York City real estate is always a nightmare. But I'm really hoping that we are able to maintain the size of our program while we go back in person, because there's such a need amongst the population that I work with for especially like very practical job skills, E&L. So just doing our best to roll with the punches.
Yes, rolling with the punches. That's a great expression. We've had a lot of punches that we've had to roll with, for sure.
Yep.
And Sarah brings up such a good point about how will this online instruction continue to be part of what we do? It's never going to be the same. Education has changed forever. In our time here as educators, we will see more and more use of web conferencing like Zoom, integrated with being in person. And we'll be exploring a lot of that. And for which type of student or which program or which population does it work well for? Does it not work as well for? So there will be a lot of experimenting with this. For example, let's say you are in person, but a student is sick and stays at home that day. It used to be they would just miss the day of instruction. But now maybe they can turn on Zoom and still follow something that's happening. We talk here, this is not something that happens in the DR, but we were talking about snow days here. Snow day used to be so fun. And remember, I read the book to you, The Snowy Day, no school and just playing outside. well, now are we going to let children have snow days, or are we going to tell them to go on Zoom all day? You know, a lot of different changes that we'll be exploring as we go forward. And I think just Jamie, maybe I haven't heard from. So what's your fall looking like, Jamie?
Hi, everyone. So I'll be back at the school I've been working at for a while now. It's a high school in East Harlem. And we're a pretty small school, so I'll be teaching all 4 grades. I'll be the E&L co-teacher in their English classes. I'll also teach probably a couple, 1 or 2 standalone classes for our English language learners. We definitely have an email on approach to the summer. Unfortunately, I wish we had a no email. But so I've been getting lots of updates. And this summer we had, we used our outdoor space more for the summer school, I guess. And we were able to bring in some different like music and dance and art classes to pair with the classes the students needed. And apparently that's been really successful. We've had a lot more kids have started coming back to the school, and they seem excited about coming back. So we're having talks now about how to kind of continue being creative with the programs we bring in, the way we use the outdoor space. Because even when New York City opened back up, I think we had maybe 5 kids come back to the school. So we've been worried about re-engaging the kids and also thinking about their mental health, and just thinking about ways to bring joy back to school, because we know that the students maybe have been missing out on some joy. So that's what we've been talking about.
Jamie, thank you. And 2 things that you said that connect to tonight, when you talked about using the outdoor space, you know, bringing students out into out of those classroom walls and giving them a reason to come to school, an excitement and a purpose. And that's a lot to do with your planning, your unit designs. And if you're not excited about what you're teaching, it's really hard to get students to be excited about it. So this is a great moment of opening up because of the technology, because of using different space, because of all the efforts you've been making to advance English teaching in your public schools with your new government. There's a great moment to be creative and be bold. So I'm just going to ask everybody to, like, everyone I can see, just sit all the way back. Even our Professor Juan Valdez, we're going to ask him to just bring your shoulders all the way up to your ears and drop them. And drop them down. Bring them all the way up to your ears and drop them down. Okay. And then let's reach out and just touch each other, wave to each other. Stretch your arms all the way out of your body. Okay, and then we're going to go to the left, all the way over. Just get a stretch in there. Oh, the side. Oh my gosh. And then do one more stretch this way. Oh, okay. Roll those back, and we're going to take a deep breath. We're going to open our mouth really big and take in the energy of the universe and let it out. We're here together, and we are amazing. So here we go. We're going to be talking tonight about planning in units. We're going to be bringing together lots of this learning that we've been doing over the past 9 sessions and more. And I'm excited to give time as well to my wonderful co-teachers to share some of their units so that you are excited and ready for Thursday, because Thursday is our big showcase day, a chance for you to share and show what you're thinking about. So here we are. We're going to be talking about backwards planning and unit planning. Before I do that, I want to just quickly recap from our grammar discussion the other day. So in our grammar discussion, which was, I guess, on Thursday last week, We'll work on the muting. Okay. We could talk for weeks just about different ideas around grammar, you know, but in general, what we talked about was inductive and deductive approaches, students discovering rules versus you just giving them the rule. We talked about creating authentic context so they can practice using the grammar, giving students chunks of language so that they can begin to already communicate and then understand more about the grammar rules, and balancing form and meaning. And that's really what we're going to be talking about tonight, because every one of us has a different situation. In some of your situations, you are very focused just on basic form, structure, vocabulary, grammar of English, not so much about a communication or maybe content. Others of you are working with students who are, let's say, learning about technology, but they're also learning English at the same time. So there's a lot of focus on communication and meaning and maybe not as much on form. We know that we really need both. If it's all grammar, all structure, all rules, but for no authentic reason, it actually doesn't stick. It doesn't stick to the student. They forget it. But when we give students a context, something they're going to be talking about, writing about, listening to, and it's thematic, integrated, it has a base, like as if you're planting a seed, you need to plant the seed in some pot and some soil so it can grow. If we just throw seeds around, here's this topic, here's this language, it doesn't form and grow. So this is where we move from talking about those skills and talking about grammar to talking about unit planning. So I'm going to ask you to get a little creative, okay? There's no wrong answer, okay? Just open up your mind a little bit. I'm showing you a picture here on my screen, and you see there's different colored dots, right? Let's imagine that this picture is a metaphor, okay? It's an analogy. It is a symbol. It represents your student's final project in a unit that they're doing in your class, okay? What could those different components, those different areas, those different colors represent? Okay, so I'm a little bit out there. I'm going to see if anyone can follow my thinking here. Okay, Josiah says, for me, the dots represent the skills. Nice. Okay, Josiah, thank you. Rafael Alessandro Reyes Gutierrez says, I would say the dots represent what the students are going to do with the language or use. Dariana says ideas, the different ideas from the unit. Diversity, lots of differences or experiences in the unit. Ooh, Aureli's different levels of learning, the different information, the thoughts, the things they did, the steps. Luis Martes says the steps in the project. Wonderful. Braulio says abilities, preferences, the forms, Conrado says. Elvis says different voices they've created, different opinions, the different knowledge, the different goals. Okay, the steps. Wonderful. So you're looking at this picture. It's just a bunch of different colored areas, different colored dots, and you're imagining what this could represent if your students finished a project. All right, beautiful. Victoria says the objective, the components. Wonderful. Okay, so now I'm going to have you look at this, okay? Now this is your student's final project, and you might have to back away to see it. Okay. Do you want to add anything more now? Now that you see the final project and you're remembering this, how does this relate to this? Okay. All right, so we have different, somebody says different ideas, different points of view. What are all those, the goals, the strategies? But now it's organized. I see Orenson says, wow, it's the same dots, but somehow now they're organized. Okay, the output, the keys of the puzzle. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. Okay. I think you're onto it. Okay, so let's take a look here. I have that first picture with all those different pieces. Then you see this second picture, right? And if I say that curriculum is a pathway between the first and the second picture, or between the second picture back to the first picture. What are your thoughts about that? What are your thoughts? What is Laura talking about? What is Laura Becker talking about? What do I mean by this? So I'm going to let a couple people, I'm only going to call on a couple people, but if anybody thinks they kind of want to talk through this, you're welcome to raise your hand. What is this relationship between these pictures? Why am I saying that this is like curriculum planning? What do you think? Wonderful. Lloyde, how you doing, Lloyde?
Hello.
Hello.
Okay. How are you?
Good, good. We have the same earrings today, Lloyde.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm wearing my.
Yes, it's true.
Tell me what you think. How do these relate? I know I'm a little bit out there tonight. I'm a little out there, but I want you to kind of think in new ways. So what do I mean here?
I think that the docs represents the knowledge that the students are going to acquire. And when you pull all of that together, we can get the pictures there. Why they really know what they really know, because we are going to give the students a lot of information. We are going to work through different topics, and that doesn't mean that they are going to learn everything. So I think that the docs are all the things that we are going to teach, and the picture is why they learn.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank
that
you.
was lovely, Lloyde. There are all these elements, she's saying, there are all these components or pieces, and we see them kind of coming together in the second one, whereas they were just kind of scattered in the first picture. They're coming together in the second picture. Richard Ramirez, what do you think?
Okay. I think that the final picture represents the objectives we already have. So we're gonna reach those objectives through a process that we had to do with the student. And it's like the phrase we have right there, begin with the end in mind. So we have to set the objective first, and then we have a clear idea of where are we going to. So in that way,
yes. So you are picking up on something really important that I wanted someone to share. So I'm glad that you did, Richard. You are talking about the objectives, the fact that I can have students do all of these things in picture on the left, but if I don't know where it's going, if I have no objectives, it doesn't really come together to form something. Is that what I'm just kind of repeating what you're saying, Richard? Is that?
yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Wonderful. Excellent. Yeah. So objectives, that they're not just there because your supervisor wants to see them. They are fundamental. Okay, Tinio, what do you think?
Okay, hi, how are you doing
How are
today?
you? Good.
Fine. Okay, I'm gonna follow your line. Get ahead of me, right? Okay, now picture on the left represents for me all the elements or components we have at the beginning, and that we are planning to do something with them, but we still don't have in our minds what that is. Okay. Yeah, and so on the right, we have what we can get to do with all the elements we have at the beginning. So we can say that on the left, we have ideas that we are going to put together, like with all the elements the curriculum offers to us. And so we get them, and it depends on us what we are going to do with them. Maybe you give a teacher all the elements and they can get to do something different to what you're going to do. So we just have to take into consideration at the time to plan and put all the elements together, learning styles and, you know, students' reality, until we can get to have like an image, a final image or objective final project, like a concrete final project of what we planned at the beginning with all the ideas we had in mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You said a few wonderful things there. And I think having that ambition, I'm going to call it ambition, an ambitious goal, not just to put some pieces together, not just to put some English words together, but something bigger, something greater, something ambitious that we have in mind that we can drive towards. It's like having your car, and you get in the car and you have no idea where you're going. Yes, you will learn things along the way, you will see things. But what if you knew where you wanted to go? How would it be different? And as you as a guide, you're creating that pathway for your students. And it's a very important and complicated role when we do design curriculum. I'm going to call on Aracelis Esteves. Aracelis, what would you like to share?
Hello. So I was thinking like the first picture is just a small part of the big picture. So what you teach them is the small part. You can teach them everything. And also is the idea you have in the beginning, but with the process of teaching, yeah, so it can be transformed idea into something else, into something bigger, with the idea of the students and with their experiences and with their imagination. So you can not teach them everything, but the small part can be transformed in a bigger part. I don't know if you understand.
I think so. And that's very touching, Aracelis, because you know what you made me think of that I wasn't thinking of before is, let's say that I want everyone to create this portrait of a man, and I give them all the tools on the left, all the language, the structures, all those pieces. Not every student is going to have the exact same portrait of a man. This could be one example, but there could be many others that will all use what I've given them, but what you said, Adisa, is what they bring. Their unique components or things that we wouldn't even know to bring in, they might bring and create something a little bit different that would represent them. Wonderful. I'm getting a little emotional. I don't know. I think because I know we have one more session Thursday. And so I feel like things are coming together for us in the group and also with our own curriculum. And I thank you so much for those ideas. I'm going to, let's see, I have to call my little Joelle, my little baby, Josiah. What does Joelle have to say to us today?
Want to participate, baby?
Yeah,
He's
he should
always
be.
very quiet.
He's in his silent period right now.
Yeah, he is. I really like this picture, Laura, because actually I said skills, but in some point I'm right because you have to plan. The picture on the left, you have to plan what your goal is going to be. So we have learned so far skills that we are going to use in order for us to plan a unit or a lesson. And the results are going to be like the picture on the right, right? Yeah. So it's very important for us to understand, right, baby? That we need to construct, that is like a puzzle that we have to put all the pieces together, all the knowledge that we had acquired in this course, and then we have to put it together in order to help our students to get that picture on the right and get the knowledge, and they are able to feel they are learning English, that they can speak in English, they can read, write in English, and they can understand us without us using the first language, the Spanish language in this case.
Well, you know what you're making me think of is in the first picture, as Josiah is saying, there's a lot of language there, there's structures, there's vocabulary, but it's not communicating anything. There's no clear communication of the message. So the image on the right is a communication. We understand now, and that's really the ultimate goal of the use of all of those elements, those components, is for communication. Wonderful. Oh, I wish I could call on everybody. Oh, how about Rosario Espinal?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I think the first is work individual. From when you have a work with the students, individual, you know, like a focus with the students. And the second, I think, is the same work but together. Is the I can see the group, maybe the group like work in the community. In the students, like students, you have the final work is like this.
Very nice, Rosario. That's another aspect that that it's bringing something that is real world, you know, bringing something out of the English that actually does something that other people can see and share and be part of. How about Conrado?
Well, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Well, I completely agree with my colleague Tanio when he says that the left picture, the picture on the left is like components, goals, objectives, activities, strategies, exercises, time, planning, previous knowledge, instructions, and vocabulary. So in this picture, I think that there are all the skills that the teacher set for getting the instructions. So in the picture on the right, we already have the goals reached. So it's already students that put together the whole activities and strategies, the whole instruction, and then we get the goals. The goals in this case, this picture is to have the portrait of the man. And here, when you put together all the components, so those components are connected with the curriculum. No, that's my opinion.
Absolutely. And we are the ones that make those connections. You know, we have to decide out of all of those things that you listed, the skills, the strategies, the content, the vocabulary, all of that we have to make some choices about how will they be connected, for what purpose will I connect them. Hector Alvarez, what do you think?
All right, good evening.
Good evening.
The dots represent the plan of the class that the teacher is going to teach, and the final picture represents the goal, the achievement. With the last picture, the expectative is already achieved. That's why we have to plan the class before, because at the beginning, we showed what we want to teach. And at the end, we can figure out if we have achieved our objective plan in the class.
Very nice. Bravo, Hector. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop there. I'm so sorry, Marlene, Rosana, Jeronima, Arelis. I know you've put some beautiful comments in the chat. Please do add them as well so everyone can see your thoughts. You've all said so many different things, and the more we look at it, the more we can even think about other ways of imagining or reimagining the work we do. And one thing that no one maybe said that I'm thinking about now is the teacher as an artist. You know, what we do has science, has research, but it is really an art. And not only are you taking all of those different students in your room with all their diversity, all their different strengths, all their background experiences, all their different feelings about English, all their home lives, and turning it into something that is a community effort, as some of you have said. But it's also possible to create something truly beautiful through English that everyone in the world can enjoy, because English is a global language. So I encourage you to think big and remember that you are an artist as we pull together all of our learning over the last few weeks. So we've talked about why it's important to have a goal, an ambitious goal, a meaningful goal for the English learning. Why then do we think about planning in a unit? And why is planning a unit different from just Monday I'm doing this, Tuesday I'm doing that, Wednesday I'm doing that, Thursday I'm doing this, but actually planning at the unit level? Why is that really important, especially when we teach English? And especially for those of you in the DR who don't see your students every day, who may not see students every single day for English. There might be some gaps or interruptions between when you get to meet them. So I'm going to give you a second. We're going to take another breath. And I would love everyone to put an idea in the chat. What is a unit? How is it different from just teaching one lesson at a time? What is a unit? And why is a unit so important when we're teaching English as a foreign language? Oh.
There you go. You wanted to hear him? There he
That's
is.
it. He's crying in English. I feel it.
There you go.
Wonderful. So go for it. Try to answer either of those questions in the chat. What is a unit? Why is it so important when we teach English? Okay. Just going to mute myself. I'm going to just give you, I'm going to work on my wait time. I'm going to give you about 25 seconds to post something there. Any ideas you have about units versus just a bunch of lessons, and why it's important? Okay, I'm bad with wait time. All right, so we have a lot of good ideas here. We see things like units are longer, Sergio says. We see that they're made up by more than one lesson. Victoria Salazar says it's a group of lessons with some kind of sequence to them. Glennie talks about objectives at that for something that is more than just a single lesson. Okay, wonderful. And why is it so important when we learn English? Why for, okay, so Lucrecia talks about acquiring a new language has to go step by step. So you need those different pieces. Okay, let's take a look. And let's just, not sure who needs to be muted. Okay, thank you. Okay, here we go. We've gotten so good with the muting. All right, here we go. So what is a unit? Let's take a look at some of these ideas and see if they are similar to yours, if they just remind you again of why we don't want to think about just what am I doing tomorrow? What am I doing the next day? But we want to think a bit on a larger scale. Okay, so a unit is a unit short. The idea of a unit is a unit of study, and it's what you're going to teach every day, but it's usually a number of lessons. It could be 5 lessons, it could be 10, it could be 20. As you're able to begin a unit, maybe you start with a unit that's just maybe 5 lessons, but you start to grow it. Your units, when you do them every year, they get bigger, you have more and more material, and sometimes they go a bit longer. When we define our units, we're thinking about really going in depth with a particular topic. It could be a question, an idea, a subject area, a theme, and in that way, students get to really explore a topic for a period of time. A lot of times they take about, could be a week, but we like to think about a unit being a bit longer, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, could even be a month long. And we would then have several units over the course of the school year. It's a really common way to organize your teaching. And when we finish our units, they lead to something. They lead to a project, a task. They can lead to an exam also, but that's generally not as motivating as something that is real, something that students can show to the world. So when we think about our picture of all those dots and we think about the painting of the man, students want to create. Humans, we all want to create something and share it. A test is not something that we share to the world. It's something that we do for the assessment and the compliance that we need. But we want to think about how do we figure out how to assess students even without testing them all the time, through other ways that they can show their knowledge. And a unit is going to take all those language skills that we did the speaking, listening, reading, writing, pronunciation, vocabulary, grammar, all of that, and tying them together, joining them, connecting them around a theme or a content area. A lot of times, and this may not be true for you, but in my experience, teachers in the United States don't think enough about language. They think a lot about the content, the theme, the ideas, and not enough about the language skills. And teachers teaching English as a foreign language, like you are in the Dominican Republic, think a lot about language skills, but not as much about the content. So we want to think about that what makes sense for you? You'll have to decide what makes sense, but we know from like 50 years at least of research on language learning that students will learn the language more efficiently and retain or remember the language better when it's connected to meaningful content. So if I do a whole unit about art, and I look at museums and I make art, and I do an art show at the end of this unit where I explain my artist in English, I will tend to use and reuse the same language over and over in the unit, which reinforces it. And by the end of the unit, I have more ability to communicate, and I will also tend then to retain it over time. So when we abandon content, we say, well, we don't have time for content. We have all this language to teach. We have all this grammar to teach. But have you noticed your students forget a lot of the grammar, and you have to go back and reteach and go back and reteach? So a student starts English at 12 years old, and the student at 15 is learning the same thing again. Okay, because they never really learned it. They did the activities in the moment, but it wasn't deep enough to hold. It was too much what we call covering. I'm covering the past simple. I'm covering the present progressive. I'm covering the difference between progressive and, you know, the present. I'm covering. And in all that covering, students often are lost because we are being driven by what we think we are supposed to cover, as opposed to making sure students can really utilize the language. Memorization can work for some things, but for most people, it doesn't last. I mean, I memorized a lot of German in high school, and I would pass the quiz, but I can't speak at all in German now. So when I think about you in your context, I am not here to tell you, you should do this, you should. No, it's your decision, of course. What makes sense for you? I'm just offering you the thought that if perhaps you can take some of that language you're doing and connect it more to a content or a theme and stay with it a bit longer, not do so many topics, that you will find your students are able to do a lot more with the language, because you can cover something, but it doesn't mean your students are learning. So the job is, of course, about the students' output, not about our output. But I know some of you are saying, I'm really a language teacher. I'm not a content teacher. I need to teach English. English is my content. Okay, so let's take a look at these ideas here. Think about yourself for a moment as a language teacher, English language teacher, but also as a content teacher. What do I mean by content? I mean learning about art, learning about jazz music, learning about different countries and geography in the world, learning about banks and how to read stocks, learning about how plants grow, learning about recycling. You know, that's content, right? It could be social studies or environment or science, could be about cooking, could be about travel, could be about car mechanics. It's not English, it's content, right? And you're also teaching English and the content of English, of course. But I want you to think for a minute about next school year. We were talking before about our next school year. When you think about the school year coming, how is it possible? How could your students perhaps use English to learn about content? Use English for learning about content. How might your students learn English while learning about content? Think for a minute about how you might, even if you have done it or you'll do it again, or it might be new, how could you have your students in a situation where they're learning the English you want them to learn, but they're also learning about a topic area or a content area? Give me an example. Give me an example of how you might combine those two things, the content and the language. Great, I'm going to give you a moment. So give me an actual content example. All right, so let's see. Kayla talks about learning about foods, different foods of the world. What do people eat around the world? That's a great unit. You can do a unit on basically empanadas around the world. Every culture has some bread that puts it around food. We call it different things around the world. It could be healthy eating. I don't know if Cora's here, but we do a unit on that a lot here. Healthy eating. How do you persuade people to not drink sodas, you know, or sugary drinks, and to drink something healthy? Could students learn English and also about that topic of nutrition? Rosana says, could you learn about math? Could you actually learn math as well? Beautiful. Yes. A greener world. Learning about climate change, about recycling, about things we can do. If some of you use or have access to curriculum from National Geographic, Nat Geo does a lot of wonderful units like those. Health, I mean, COVID and vaccines and how does a virus travel? There's a lot of science in that, and you could also learn English at the same time. Josiah really wants to say something. Go ahead, Josiah.
Yeah, the thing is that I can't type because of Joanne.
Yeah.
I can express myself orally better.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so I was thinking about a unit that we have in our school in English now, that is in 6th grade, that is job interview. And it's very, very helpful because that way they are ready to get into a job interview in English. Like I can prepare them to do that, and they are able to express themselves in the job they want and the skills they have for that job in particular. And, you know, they can acquire the knowledge there in that unit. So after they finish the school, they can go and get a job, even though they get an interview in English.
So it's interesting what you're saying. So Josiah said a job interview. And what I think is so fun about curriculum planning is it in the real world, we teachers, we don't just take some objective and then we take the content and we jump all around. So like a job interview is a great example of a performance task, something students would be able to do at the end of a unit. And the content might be, I don't know, professions, different professions people have, or it could be about communication skills. It could be, there's different topics that you could house or place that unit inside a career unit, Wendy says. Marlene, what do you think?
Sorry, I wanted also that they can, in the writing part, they can learn how to write down their own resume in English, which is really cool.
Yes. So the whole kind of a careers unit can have resume writing as a great performance task and very useful, as well as the job interview. Speaking task. You have a writing and a speaking task, which is wonderful coming out of the unit. Okay, great. Marlene.
Okay,
Sorry.
hello everyone.
Hello.
Yeah, I was thinking about, for example, daily activities. When we teach that, we are really developing skill. It's the content, but for me, that is missed. When we teach a content, specific content, we are helping students to develop abilities in the language. And I think that's really important. But the problem is when we focus just in the content and in the sequence, and we forget about that we are trying to develop skills in student language skills. So for me, we have to be clear about the content, but to have in mind that the most important thing in this part is to develop skills, language skills, because maybe my students can have a domain about a content in a specific, but if I stuck there, I stop and I forget that I have to let them to use the language in a real context. It could be difficult for them to understand and then to use the language in another context.
Yeah, so that's one of the the big challenges that you're bringing up. And so we talked about, let's use the job interview as an example. The job interview is that concrete performance task that students have to complete at the end of the unit. Marlene is bringing up the functional piece. What's the function of the language that we use in job interviews? Maybe it's being persuasive. Maybe it's telling a narrative about yourself. Maybe it's questioning and answering. Maybe there's some work on understanding formal and informal register. All of those are pieces of the function of the language that students will take no matter whether it's job interview or something else. Because you're right, in a way, the specific content and the specific words you give them to use in that situation can fade away, but it's a general ability that you're kind of starting to foster. And that's challenging too, to think about the functional aspect. Wendy Carbonell. Wendy, you won. Woo! Lottery night.
This is me.
Yay! This is you. Woman, I'm glad to see you.
This is me you're looking for.
You're looking great.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Same.
Yes, and I agree with Josiah.
Yeah.
When she said that she used the job interview. I try to do this, and I put the student to put in the as a homework to write a resume according to the job that they want. When I teach at university in different careers, I try to give a different vocabulary about their careers. For example, they study system engineer. I put a vocabulary contest about system engineer or about computers. And when the other students account, other students for electrical engineer, I try to find different vocabulary that can help in their own careers when they finish.
That's wonderful, Wendy. I mean, that is a lot of differentiation that you're doing, but you have the common theme, but you're letting them each explore actually authentic what they want to study. And so, and there's even different kinds of resumes in different fields. They look different, right? And so they can explore that as well. And that's a really wonderful way to kind of hook students in something very real that they're going to use, and give also variety. You know, not everyone is going to do the exact same thing at the end. Wonderful. Glennie.
Okay. Hi, how are you?
Good.
I was remembering an activity that I used when Josiah was talking about the interview. I remember that in the class, I used with a student that they did a dramatization. And the dramatization was about different professions. The student should look the profession that they want. And I remember when they did that participation about dramatization, they could have role played. Before that, they made like a guide They use the writing, they write the conversation, and after that, they present the conversation before the student. And I remember that was very, very enjoy. They enjoy the activity. They feel very happy, and they can have a good dramatization, a good performance in the English class.
Yes, that's wonderful, Glennie. That's a great example. It reminds me of something we talked about when we talked about teaching speaking skills, that it's something that makes me crazy when teachers put students to speak in the front of the room that they're not ready for it. So they're just reading off their paper. It's not a very good, as you said, dramatization, because they were not prepared. They had no rehearsal. So it's really not very great to watch. But when you, like what Glennie's talking about, is when they've worked on something for a while and they're ready and they can come up and share, they feel very proud and they feel very excited to be able to be ready to use the English in that way. And that's a great speaking component that you can add in. Let me just hear from a couple more people about this idea of, can your students learn English and learn content? How about Rosana, Antonia?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. I'm really in love with my personal diary.
Oh, yes, right.
Yes,
Come, tell us again about that.
Yes. This is the favorite topic of my students. The most important thing, sorry for the motorcycle.
That's okay.
The most famous means of transportation in Dominican Republic. I totally agree with Josiah, with all my classmates. The most important about this kind of activity is that each student can learn with the level of English that they have. Beginner, middle, and high level. They can go in their own way. It's just like that.
Yes. So when you have something that is potentially like a narrative, yes, an individual narrative, it has a lot of flexibility. And one of the things that you can think about is, let's say you have something with language that you really like doing, like a personal diary project, you know, how can you amplify or expand on it with maybe, for example, the diary from someone from literature, like maybe it's something here we do a lot. I'll put it in the chat. I don't know if she's famous there. Helen Keller. So reading about someone else's diary before you start your own diary.
Sorry,
oh, no, go ahead.
Some of the students ask me, teacher, I feel so bad because I can't write a lot of words. And I say, then don't worry. If you just can write sentences, go ahead. And they feel free to explain as they know.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing, is thinking about taking what we do as language teachers and expanding into giving students more ideas of the world, maybe through reading someone else's diary, maybe it could be things that you find that are from literature, or they can be a fact. That can also add on to your students' knowledge of the world as well. I'm just going to do one more, I think maybe Janira Suero. I think you wrote before about the healthy eating. Did you want to share about that?
Yeah, I'm eating my apple.
Very good.
Yeah, my opinion on this, I think that content is part of what makes language meaningful. So that's why it is important to include it as in a unit. And for example, in a unit based on healthy eating habits, we incorporate not only like the content, but also values. We can include the culture in all of that. So I tried that and ended the unit with a project designing a menu. So I include art because they enjoyed that part, designing and decorating their menus.
Yeah.
Different restaurants, thematic restaurants, healthy or whatever. So
yeah,
included all of that. Now, in the Dominican Republic, we have to incorporate in the units a learning situation. Part of the parts that have to include the unit. That situation is a situation that your unit will like go around that.
Like an authentic context?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in healthy eating habits, for example, let's suppose that somebody has having problems, maybe feeling sick, headaches, not exercising, so not drinking enough water, and happens this, and that. So let's find a solution for that. What can we do? Whatever. And that ends with a product, something like that. That's the idea of how we have to design the units, including the learning situation that makes our lessons go around the solution of that situation, let's say.
Yeah.
So that is something that we have to include
That's great. Thank you for saying that. And thank you for sharing the way it's framed there, because that's very helpful. So I'm thinking that that idea of the learning situation, that contextual situation, it's like a scenario, you know, and it makes it much more a real life reason to communicate. And that is very powerful to frame that final product, where they're going, what they're supposed to be doing with the language. I'm going to continue on here, and I want you to look at these statements. I'm going to put 8 statements up, all right? And as I put them up, think, is this true for me? Maybe all of them are true at different times for you, or maybe some of them are not true for you. So I want you to think about, are these true for you? How do you begin planning your units? When you go to plan your units, what do you do? Is this true for you? I start with a test in mind that I know students will need to take at the end of the unit. Is that true for you? Or true sometimes? I start with individual lessons, but then I build them up to some final assessment. Is that true for you? I start with a story or a video I really like, and I plan from there. I start with the units in the order of the textbook that I use in my school. I start with the grammar my students need to learn, and I change the theme or the topic maybe every day. No textbooks. I start with a content area I want students to learn about, and then I find the language in that content to teach. So when you're planning, I start with some fun activities I want to use. And the last one is I start with a project I want students to create and make an assessment rubric for it. Okay. Which of these things do you find true for you, or are all of them true for you? Melvin Mota, what do you think? My friend Melvin.
Hello.
Hello. What do you think? Are all of those true? Some of them true? Which one, when you go to like plan a unit for your students and you're sitting down to kind of plan, where do you begin? Or do you, all of these might be true?
Well, I think that unfortunately, I agree, or all or most of them are true
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially, let me see, number 8.
Okay.
So sometimes I start with a project in my mind, and with an idea that they do that at the end, or that they complete it. And I think that we should focus more on strategies and things like this to teach.
So you don't think that's good to start with your project in mind? Oh, wait, unmute.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, well, that is what we are asked to do, but I don't think that is the best idea.
Interesting. Okay, interesting. Lorena Bell today, what do you think? You said you feel none of those are true, except maybe 8 once in a while.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Well, in my case, they're false for me because I start with the objective in mind. And yes, they can include the video, they can include the fun activities, games, whatever, but it's one specific objective that we have. And then we build up from it to, I mean, like backwards. We go planning the activities that we can do in order to achieve that goal. So that is, so there in number 8, except number 8, because sometimes we have a project that we have to achieve in the classroom. For example, once in a year, there is a special date or something that we want to do. And in that case, yes, we have the project, and then we have to think about what students are going to do and create an assessment for that.
Okay.
So basically with objectives.
Yeah. So it's kind of it goes from the end, which is, let's say, sometimes that project, and then goes back and looks at the objectives again and says, are these going to meet the objectives? And then there's some parts in the middle, you know, maybe a video, an experience, something that I want to include in it. So it goes kind of in a cycle that way. Okay, wonderful. How about Rafael Gatto? What do you think?
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Yeah. You know, it makes me everything you have on here on the picture, it makes me feel kind of made me reflect a little bit, because really I've not been that good the last few years. And you know, number 1 and number 5, you know, are 2 of the things I used to do a lot. You know, starting with a test in mind, and also teaching just grammar, you know, because I want them, you know, to have an exam at the end. And I wasn't focusing, you know, in the main things, you know, in order to teach English. So it makes me reflect a lot, you know, that I've not been doing such a great job during the last few years. So it's really, you know, makes me think a lot about my work as a teacher. And I really appreciate this. And I thanks.
Raphael, that's, I know you've been wonderful the last few years. And the truth is that, you know, the connection between a test, creating a test is a really good idea, because it can help you clarify what it is you really want the students to learn, because they can't learn everything. So what is it you would put on a test? And if you would put it on the test, you'll teach it. When there is no test, and I'm not all about tests, but it's more of the mental exercise of it. Yes, it's for me, it's more about me and my planning than the students taking the test. because when I decide these are the things that I know they have to, you know, have some control over this form, let's say, then for sure I will be practicing it a lot and teaching it a lot. And I will let other things go, because one of the most important things is editing, taking away. It's not always putting more in your unit. It's actually choosing what to take out, because it's hard to take things out. Maybe there's a cute video, you like it so much, you really want to put in the video, but the video doesn't reinforce the language. It doesn't, but you just want to put it in. So sometimes it's hard to not put things into your unit, you know? And I think that the fact that these are all 8 of these things, there's nothing bad here. These are processes that all of us use at different times and in different ways. So we're just kind of trying to, like you said, reflect on them, bring them to the surface. Karina Hernandez, what do you think?
Yes, in my case, I always present, I start my units with a contest. For example, if I'm talking about public places, I always say to my students, let's see, I'm going to tell my students, imagine if you're in the United States and you are lost and you to ask somebody about any place in a hospital, or something happened to you when you are alone and you don't know what is that place. So I always start the class with something like that. And for me, it's number 6.
Yeah, tell me about 6.
Yeah, I start with the content area. I want a student to learn about it, and then find a language in the context stage.
Yeah. So what do you mean by that?
Well, that's what I was telling you.
Yes, you meaning that you'll find like a scenario or a situation in the content.
Yeah.
And in that number 6, I'm thinking also about like you were saying about directions, right? Let's say you're lost, you know, and you're in New York City, what do you do? What kind of language are you going to need, right, in order to perform that language activity? So, you know, you'll have to say things like, pardon me, excuse me, I'm sorry, do you know the, you know, and then there's going to be some kind of formulaic language that you would use. So you're right, thinking through the actual scenario helps you create the language, you know, that you're going to have to think of. Thank you so much, Karina. And Jeronima, I know you've been waiting a while.
Hello.
Hello.
I was thinking that you won't see my hand raised.
I know, lady, I see you. And I saw you before too. And I love your background with those couches.
Oh, thank you.
It's awesome. So I thank you for your patience. Yeah. What do you think about these 1 to 8? What do you do when you're planning?
In my case, I think that is a kind of combination of some of them. For instance, I want to think about the order on the textbook. I mean the content. And also I used to use what I think that my learners need to learn, but I used to contextualize, and those things I try to put together depending on the level of the students. So I have to follow some steps and some order too, but that is that I used to do. I am not so funny most of the time, but I try. So depending on the cases, I use music, or could be some pictures, and sometimes some videos too. Now we have a more smart, devices now in school.
Yes.
And we are trying to use all of them next year, because during this year it wasn't. But now I hope we can take an advantage of it. But those combinations, I think, could be good. In my case, not only what I want to teach them, but also what they want to learn too. That I have to combine those things.
That's, I mean, I think that's very honest. And, you know, it doesn't mean you're not fun, Jeronima. I know you're fun. I can tell you're fun. And, you know, the kind of planning that we are sometimes told we should be doing isn't always how teachers really plan. You know, teachers use a lot of different approaches. And like you said, sometimes it's just, oh, I really like this story, I want to use it. And you start to build something around it, but then you go back and you say, well, what are the language pieces or the objectives? And it's recursive. It's a process that kind of changes. And the fact that you're talking about those smart devices, you know, that now there's a lot of technology, we don't always have to give students everything. The students can access or find some of those materials themselves online as we're doing a unit. So that's going to be interesting to see how we use those without the students getting very distracted. You know, that's a challenge, right? For sure. I'm gonna move on. I'm so sorry. I just want to make sure we have enough time. So I'm gonna have you lower hands, and all of these are I think true. I've used all of them myself when I plan, but I do want to present you with this idea of backwards design that has kind of a structure to it. But the truth is, I don't follow that exactly. However, when I'm finished my plan, it's like a good frame to look at. Have I covered or contained everything I want? So with backwards design, why is it called backwards? Well, it doesn't go from, I'm going to do this Monday, I'll do this Tuesday, I'll do this Wednesday, and see where I go. It begins with the end in mind. So it starts with number one. What are the results I want? If I want to bake a cupcake, if that's my big thing that I want students to be able to do at the end, then I have to decide, how will I judge this? How will I judge the cupcake? You know, is it going to be how sweet it is, how chocolatey it is, how high it is? What are my criteria? Those are those objectives. So once I have this idea of what I want students to do, let's say the job interview that Josiah brought up. Let's say I want students to do a job interview. How would I grade that job interview? You know, what language would I want to hear? Or if I'm having students create a resume, what language do I want to see? What content? And then I go back, number three, and I actually plan the learning events or plan the lessons to get me there. Sometimes when we start with number three, we can get a bit lost with number three. We have lots of different activities. They're fun, they're funny, or we're doing a lot of different things, but we sort of lose the focus of that place we're going, creating that art profile of our gentleman from before. So backwards design helps keep us focused on those results that we want. And as you've said, that learning situation, what is the thing they're really going to use English for? What are they going to produce at the end? Okay. So when we plan backwards, we start with those results, the cupcake, the job interview. What is that thing? What do I want them to know in terms of content? Let's say about healthy eating. What is it about eating healthy or nutrition that I want students to know at the end of the unit? And that's content. But also, what are the language skills? Listening, speaking, reading, writing. What's the vocabulary? What's the grammar that they need? Okay. And I think about both those pieces, and probably you are thinking a lot about the language and maybe a little about the content, and that's fine, as long as there's some content to give this thing a situation. The next stage is finding evidence. Evidence means my grading, my assessment, my evaluation. It might be a rubric, it might be a quiz, whatever it is I'm going to do, that I will know if students have been successful or not. If I don't know what success looks like, it's really hard for me to lead students in any direction. So I want to know, what is it I'm going to do when I grade them? And will there be, let's say, a grade that deals with the nutrition knowledge they have, as well as the language components? Okay. One of the things that's really helpful that we use sometimes here in the United States, it's called RAFT. It's a way to design that final project or that final product. Hold on, we'll just figure out who's muting. Okay. So what you do in that situation, so let's go back to the healthy eating situation. All right. Let's say my unit is about trying to convince people to eat healthier. All right. And what I would do as a teacher is I would actually fill this out before I start my unit. And I would think, okay, what are the students, what role is the student going to play? Is the student going to pretend they are a nurse or a doctor, or maybe someone writing about health issues for a magazine? They're a journalist, whatever it is. You come up with the role. Who's the audience? Who is the student writing for or speaking to? Is it children? Is it old people? Is it people with heart problems? Is it traveler, whatever? And the format, is it going to be a brochure, a poster, a video presentation, a rap, an essay? What is it they're going to do? And the topic, of course, in this case might be nutrition or healthy eating. So the raft is just a structure to help you organize that product you're going to have students do. Then you can plan all those day-to-day activities. What do I need to teach to get them where they need to go? And how will I reflect on my unit afterwards and know if it was successful or not? So let's take a look at this example. This is a unit that we called Geography of the World. That was the title. The role students were participating in a presentation of different countries around the world. So let's say Rosa had one country, Carmen had another, Claudia had another, everybody had a different country. Okay. The audience for the presentation were other students, classmates. The format is an oral presentation where they had to show a map, and they have to show, you know, on a map, they call it a map key, a map legend, where all those pictures or symbols on the map mean like highway or city or mountain or lake, that kind of thing. So they had to make a legend or a key for their map and also present about their country. The topic, of course, is in the area of geography. So I'm going to give you a chance to think for a minute. If I give you this final project, this is the final project here. Can you guess what grammar students might need for this unit? What vocabulary you might hear in the unit? What listening, speaking, reading, writing skills I might need to do for this unit? Or any content that students might need in this unit. All right, so I'm going to give you a chance to think for a second and give me an idea about any of those that you would like to. What might I be talking about if I'm presenting, let's say, the Dominican Republic, and I have to show a map and explain a little about the geography of the Dominican Republic to my classmates? What would I have to use language-wise in terms of grammar, vocabulary? What skills will I need, and any content? Okay, great. Oh, nice, Lisbeth. Prepositions of place, present simple, adverbs place. I would need content like the actual places in the DR. Okay, I probably need some kind of adjectives. I might need some weather vocabulary. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, a vocabulary term like colonial zone, that might be a term I need, a specific term. Okay. Oh, nice, Apollinaire. Oh, passive voice, is located in, nice. Okay, could be places like beaches. Conrado says, Hector talks about comparatives and superlatives, right? The tallest mountain in the DR, or the biggest city in Spain, or whatever the country it is. Okay, awesome, awesome. So as you unpack or deconstruct this final performance that you want students to do, you can start to see inside of it all of the language that you're going to have to teach for them to be successful, right, in the unit. Wonderful. Yes, Sita talks about the speaking skills, right? I'm going to have to be able to present orally. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So what I wanted to tell you is that this is a unit that I did with some teachers, and I'm going to give you the unit. This was an actual unit, and I thought it would be interesting for you to know that, am I frozen?
No, you're not frozen. You're not frozen. You're okay.
Okay, okay. You guys are freezing on me. Okay, I'm going to keep going.
Go ahead.
Okay, so this was a unit that was done with students here in New York who were brand new to English. They had just come to the country, and in their classroom, they had a lot of maps, they worked with globes, and then they presented about the different countries. And there were students there from the Dominican Republic, from Haiti, who had very, very beginner English. And they were able to perform in this unit of study. So I'm going to be sharing with you the whole unit, and you'll be able to see how it was planned with the final project, and then all of the different language that they needed, the rubric that was used, and you'll see a lot of the things that you have already posted in the chat, and also the 10 lessons that went inside this unit. So it was actually about 10 lessons long. So you'll have all of those lessons here, as well as the unit overview, so that you can take a look later and see a little more. And you're absolutely right. You got all of the language that they needed in here. And they learned a lot about content. A lot of the students who did the unit did not know much about reading maps. So it actually taught them some map skills and geography, language, as well as the English component. So that was an example of that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to ask a few of my co-teachers to share a unit that maybe they've been working with. And I'm going to say, you know, however long you want to talk, 5 minutes, whatever, however long, don't feel rushed. And we'll share a few of those units so that you can see and get a little more of an idea. I also wanted to tell you that I'm going to be sharing with you a whole bunch of units for beginning English students. One of them is actually called Eating Healthy, so you'll have to take a look at that. Another one is about finances. Some of them are about family, about housing, etc. These are units that are used here, that we've used here in the United States, but you're welcome to take them and do whatever you like with them. So I'll be sharing all those links as well. So I'm going to stop sharing so that if someone, one of my collaborators would like to share, please jump in and we'll take each maybe about 5-6 minutes or so, depending how many people want to share. So whoever would, maybe Leanne, I know you mentioned this unit that you've been working on with this consultant, maybe share a little of that if you don't mind.
Sure. So I will share my screen. Let's see. Okay. So this is the template so the unit that I'll be teaching in the fall will have 2 like levels. So this is the entering and emerging one, then which is like the beginners, and then we'll have like a kind of like a mid-level, the transitioning and expanding. So this one, it's going to take, we're thinking about, we haven't taught this unit yet, as it will be the first year we're rolling it out in September, but we're anticipating this is going to take about 6 weeks. And the title is Who Tells Your Story? This is, we're thinking about like how, you know, personal histories, you know, how like telling our own personal stories, our personal histories, finding our own place, also giving them language that they would use like in school, in their communities, and about their families. So these are some of our questions where we have to maybe go back and revise some of these. But what we are thinking is the knowledge, what our students are going to be able to do will be to write an informative paragraph and using specific target vocabulary in speaking and writing. And our linguistic skills that we're going to be working on, that we're going to be focusing on in this 6 weeks is we'll write and speak statements with am, is, and are, correctly identify content vocabulary, which we'll get into. Using looking at some prefixes and suffixes that like to show cognates. So like, for example, in like community, getting them to notice some morphological awareness in Spanish and how it can relate in English, because we want them to pick up and use some of these cognates, you know, right from the beginning, and identifying initial sounds and vocabulary words and how they come up. So what our performance task that we're going to be doing is they're going to be writing like a newsletter report. We have like a Google Doc template. So each mini section that we are going to create, the students are going to create like a writing piece so that at the end they have this like very like cumulative newsletter to share with the people with their parents or the people they live with at home. And they have this like what feels like will then look like a long thing, a long document written in English, even though it's taken place over a few weeks. So I can just show you just an example for like week 1. This would be introducing themselves and describing their background. We have 2 stories that we're going to read, families from reading A to Z and who's in a family. We're going to start doing a lot. Day 1 and day 2 are focused a lot on oral language. So getting the students to look at pictures and getting them to start using words like father, mother, brother, sister, relatives, married, divorced, born, passed away, reading a story about families, introducing family members, having them create their own family trees. And so there's a lot of speaking in the first week. Lots of speaking, lots of not so writing focused, lots of speaking. In the second week, it's similar. We're going to be reviewing different family members, reading a second story, and then doing like a bit of a jigsaw. So looking at each student will be given different pages of the book, and they'll have to tell their partners what they learned. So a lot of these texts we actually found, seeing if I can find where I put so this is an example of the text that it's like online, from online, and just, it's like very simple text, and this is where we're pulling our target vocabulary from. I don't have any examples of the students creating the final project as we haven't rolled out this unit yet, but it's going to be about 6 weeks. Let me just hold on. 6 weeks long. And yeah, I don't know if anybody has any questions about it or. like I should cover more.
No, it looks wonderful, and people are having great reactions to it in the chat. And I love that you have an example from a Spanish bilingual context, which is so great for the teachers here. And remember, you know, you are capable, you meaning the Dominican teachers who are with us, you're capable of great things. It doesn't mean that these are exactly what you should be doing, or that, oh, we need to do it this way, but we can't for whatever reason. We want to think, you know, in terms of inspiring each other. And that's what the rest of tonight and Thursday is all about, is inspiring each other. You know, even let's say Frederick is at a school not far from Leanne. It doesn't mean that his school, he would be using the same unit. You know, we're all in different situations, but we can get a lot of ideas from each other. And a lot of people are asking, please, Leanne, share your unit with us. Would you mind sharing it with us? And oh, she says yes, which is wonderful.
Sure.
And that topic of, you know, working from just families and family stories and what families do is really good beginner English. And so relevant to a lot of the teaching situations that people will be in. Thank you so much, Leanne. Awesome. Anyone else, my colleagues, want to share for a few minutes about their unit? Frederick.
I have a plan, yeah.
Yay. Frederick is an expert on project-based learning, PBL, which has some similarities to this sort of task-based learning, but a bit different, and relates to some of the things that you all have talked about earlier. So Frederick, take it away.
All right, let me share my screen here. Thank you very much.
You're getting a lot of God bless yous, Leanne, so that's always good. We all need that.
All right, I have a different format, but I have different screens here that I want to show you. Can you see my presentation?
Yeah.
You got it? Okay. So this unit plan actually is a larger, it's a large unit plan. And I want this to be a more aspirational or inspirational unit plan. When you do project-based planning, it takes a little bit of experience. So this is what you can do maybe after you get some teaching years under your belt. What is PBL? PBL is actually an acronym for project-based learning. It's where students investigate a local global problem and share their own research-based solutions. And an example is best growing methods for the environment. And I'll explain to you what that is. You can see in the picture that we're planting seeds in the classroom. I heard some of you have already said that you have units revolving around food, so why not growing food, right? You can see our student here. Her name is Darielis, and she's actually from Dominican Republic. So when you have a PBL, you have to have a driving question. That was mentioned today. So that means something very interesting that the students can engage with. The driving question here is how to reduce the impact of our food growing systems on the environment. We're looking at two different ways of growing food, hydroponic on the left and traditional on the right. I plan to use this video to inspire my students, showing teachers creating a growing bed for the school. So let me play that for you. It's 1 minute long. I'm going to focus on planting coriander seed. Some people don't know that culantro comes from coriander or cilantro. This is what the seeds look like. This is the map. This is the plot with the weeds. We are weeding. I am weeding. This is after weeding. We are tilling the soil for growing the roots. We are adding compost. We are planting seeds. Can you guess the grammar that I'm using? We're putting the seeds in the ground. We're working as a team. We're cleaning the tools. We're watering the soil. Okay, so if you have a garden space, you can use your authentic ways of teaching and create a garden, for example. Oh, sorry, I want to go to the next one now. All right, so when you're thinking about a unit, you can establish a learning goals. This unit is for grade levels K through 12 for emerging language learners. It can be from 6 weeks to 10 weeks, depending on the growing cycle of the plants you choose. We are looking at the content standards in DR. I'm sure you have standards in math, science, and also language. If not, you can go to the next generation science standards, for example. And really important, and this was mentioned in our lecture, is having student voice and choice. For example, bean cuisine from home. You're planting beans, so what happens when you harvest them? What can we plant? These are some of the side activities you can do that are part of the larger unit. Our students really love the salad, for example. And salad grows in 6 weeks. So it's kind of easy. Let's apply the RAF test. Will this unit float? Okay, so role of the students are ethnobiologists. Not only can you study plants that are grown for eating, but you can also study plants that are used medicinally in your communities. Who's the audience? Well, if we're trying to find out which is the best growing method, our audience would be the local community growers that we can propose our findings to. Maybe they'll change the way of growing to help the planet. The format, it could be a video, it could be a presentation like this, it could be infographics. And the topic, of course, the students' solutions to reducing the impact of food growing on the environment, either traditional compared to hydroponic. So what do you think? I think this idea will float, right? All right, so how do we backward plan from this? Well, we're taking the performance task, which is speaking and writing, and you can do formative assessments during your unit plan before the summative assessment, of course. One could be the individual experiment design that the students create in the lab reports. You can also have small group teams create a digital essay on the recommended food production. And then at the end, as more of a make it public, sharing their information, they can show their findings to the community gardens, food suppliers, and food growers. So that way you can plan from these tasks. I use the 5, or I kind of invented the 6 E's in science. The first is engage with them, engage the topic. The students visit a farm and ask all the questions about growing. The second is explore. They research the traditional versus hydroponic methods. And then the third step is explain. Students begin to experiment. Okay, maybe it grows faster at hydroponic, maybe it uses less water, you know. And the fourth is to elaborate. They work in teams to work on and elaborate the presentation for the 6th step. And number 5, you as a teacher can evaluate, give feedback. They can also give feedback to each other to make sure that their recommendation is sound, just like we do in regular science, very authentic. And 6, of course, they're going to express the 6th E as a public presentation. You can see here the pictures look at the smiles on these kids' faces. You don't get that normally in a classroom, but they're outside and they're learning. And the picture on the bottom is our hydroponic system. I know I'm going a little bit over, Miss Laura, Dr. Laura, I'm sorry.
That's fine. It's awesome.
Okay. Yeah,
It's great.
I have
We
about
love it.
I have 3 more minutes.
Go
So
ahead.
applying what we've learned, vocabulary and reading support, you need a word bank, obviously. So you show pictures of a seed, a sprout, hydroponic, the leaf and the root. All of these words are essential to your project. It follows a theme. Have sentence starters. This is where your grammar and writing support come in. For example, this is a, and then you have an arrow and a picture. And you have choices, a plant, sprout, bean, or corn. Obviously, we know that this is a bean. I created a class site on Google. It's free, and the videos are free too. We did a great bean race where the students plant a bean and watch it grow and document its growth. So all of those words that we learned in the word bank, they can apply. I'll just page through, like this is the thing I made at home. Didn't go to school, but I can show these kids what they need and how to plant them. You know, you have to soak the bean and then put them in the pot. So you can do that as well. You can have them collaborate, share, and assess while using the 4 language skills. For example, they're sketching the plants, they're labeling the plant parts, they're recording their observations while speaking, they're narrating a video, they're graphing a lab report. So there's math and science thrown in here, but you're not focusing on learning a list of words, right? And then at the end, you can have a formal assessment on their public performance task. They share their findings to the local audience. So you can see Dariella's here, she's speaking to her classmates, but in the back, you don't see them. There's some experts in the growing community listening to her groups presenting their recommendation. Yeah, so at the end, these are some resources you can use. I created a platform on iEarn.org, it's free. You can also go to school field trips of gardens in the United States that are meant for schools. I can certainly share these resources with you. I wanted to share before I sign off. This is the iEarn platform. You can see the participating countries here at the bottom. I don't see any DR. So if you want to be the first to join our group at the bottom here, please feel free to join and show what your growing is like. You see the participating countries? Colombia, and then we jump to India. There's no DR. I would love Dominican Republic teachers to share. I see there's lots of chats. Information.
Yes.
I'm pretty
Everyone's
much done.
following you on YouTube now. You got a lot of new followers, Frederick, on YouTube. And what a great, I mean, that takes it to such a level. I think that, you know, a lot of people might say, oh my goodness, you know, oh, we can't do this, you know, we can't do that. And I'm sure Frederick was told a lot of the same things, you know.
I was.
I mean, so it's really about taking some of the steps, you know, maybe it's just growing some plants in your classroom to begin with, you know, right? And then, but taking the, you know, when I was looking at some of the different things that the students might do, like recording the video or taking photos. I mean, you can do all of that with WhatsApp. Every single activity could be
Right.
done using WhatsApp that you've described. It's really about the, like Conrad says, the planning, really the vision that uses the language in such a hands-on, authentic way. And like you said, the joy of doing something real, not just talking about it hypothetically or reading about it, but actually doing it yourself, you know. And beans are not too expensive. I think we can all find some beans to put in a pot, you know, to using a water bottle to plant it, right?
You're right. Everyone has some beans. Yeah, because you mentioned there was a food that everyone eats. You mentioned earlier in your presentation, and I was thinking, well, everyone has beans too in their culture.
Yeah. Everyone, oh, empanadas,
like
I was
rice.
saying.
Oh, bread, yeah, bread and rice.
Yeah, yeah. And I love this international aspect, you know, and that's the
Right.
beauty too of sharing this plant club in the whole global community. Yes, some teachers who are here tonight, Frederick, are going to represent DR now, and they're going to be in the world. And that's just going to be so cool to see.
That'd be great. I created this plant club on Facebook. I know that a lot of teachers use Facebook, so you can join that as well. It's a page,
so
awesome. It doesn't involve everybody else. We can just be our own group of plant club teachers.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. And I mean, the DR, you can grow lots of beautiful things. I mean, you're talking about a lush, fertile country that can produce stuff, you know, in that soil. So I'm sure there are a lot of things that could be grown by students. I'm wondering, my other teachers, would you like to share, or would you rather go into the breakout room to do it? What are your thoughts right now? I don't want to cut off any of my other colleagues who might have had something they want to share to the whole group. Let me know.
I could share something. I also have it as a Word document. I used the template for assignment 4 that I could just put into the chat as well.
Awesome. Yeah, go ahead, Christine.
Sure. Let me share my screen. All right, so this is the template that you will be using as you create your mini unit. I teach in Westchester County, which is, as I said, 20 miles north of New York City. And this is a unit that we used to teach when I worked in a middle school in Flushing, Queens. And so this is for ages 12 to 13 and for all students in the school. So every 7th grader used this unit. And so we had English language learners who were in the English content classes along with native speakers. And so this particular unit included native speakers, intermediate and advanced level students. And the title is The Lost Children of Sudan, with a theme of journeys and survival. The content that we were teaching was the Second Sudanese Civil War, and then also access to clean water and how important that is for communities all over the world. And the grammar or structure, this was interesting for this unit because it was designed for native speakers, which means that oftentimes teachers took for granted the ability that their students had to understand structure. And so a lot of times it's assumed that as soon as students are in 7th grade, when they're 11 or 12 years old, they're able to read and write, or write and speak, I should say, using perfect grammar. And we know that's not the case. And so the grammar is up to the teachers to determine. And often they found that assigning a writing piece, so asking students to write a short piece, allowed them to then assess what type of grammar point they needed to teach. And so they would, for example, find that maybe students were struggling to write compound sentences. And so the next day they would ask their students, or they would teach a mini lesson about writing compound sentences. So they would specifically find the need based on the writing that the students were doing. These are the 2 standards that are obviously very vague. You know, asking students to demonstrate the command of the conventions of standard English grammar is obviously very vague, and it really does need to be more specific. And so when we look at listening, speaking, reading, and writing, The unit is heavily focused on reading and writing. There's not much in it to support students in listening and speaking, although the unit was revised in 2019, and I do believe it has gotten better. But many students read the central text aloud to their, many teachers read the central text aloud to their students and ask students to follow along in the book. And that is one way that they encourage students to improve their listening skills. And then speaking, so again, it's not included in the unit plan, but they do use activities such as discussion appointments where students have designated partners that they have chosen in advance. They speak with that partner about a specific discussion question, and then that allows them to practice their answer. And so they've practiced with a partner the answer they will give, and then they feel more confident to share with the larger group after they've had the opportunity to speak with a partner. A Long Walk to Water by Linda Sue Park is the main text for this unit. And there's also a picture book for younger audiences called Naya's Long Walk. And then there's also plenty of articles, current events that they can read about what's happening in South Sudan and how the country has been changing, how the Second Civil War has impacted life in South Sudan. And then Salva Dutt is one of the main characters in the book. He is a real person, and he has also founded an organization that has helped to improve the water access in South Sudan. And the book heavily follows his experience as a child. And then there are many things that students can read about his life today. And a narrative about a lost boy or girl is the final performance task for this unit. And so when we talk about backwards design, this is the final product that students produce. They write a narrative ebook for, I believe it's a 3rd grade student, so a student who's about 7 or 8 years old. And to prepare for this extended piece of writing, students write shorter pieces on similar topics throughout the unit. And vocabulary is chosen from the text that students are reading. It is, it's basically the necessary vocabulary for understanding the content. And again, pronunciation, oftentimes teachers don't teach pronunciation to native speakers, but they have to account for the students who are second language learners. But also they have to account for native speakers who are learning new words. It is important to explicitly teach how to pronounce those new words and to use them frequently. And so ideas about the unit, it's a great unit to help students understand that not everyone in the world has access to clean drinking water and how important that is to quality of life and to the opportunities that people have in our world, and how clean water is crucial to that. And so it does inspire students to want to help to work on this effort. And the organization that Salva Dutt founded is Water for South Sudan. And in the school where I taught, the math department and the English department worked together to raise money to donate to his organization to help build a well there. And so students were extremely motivated by that, to know that the dollar they donated or the dollar they raised helped to build a well in South Sudan. And for online, waterforsouthsudan.org is an excellent resource. Newsella.com that Laura shared with us a few weeks ago also has articles about South Sudan. And then finally, a documentary that was produced about Salva Dutt called Just Add Water is available online, and students can watch that there as well. And so that is the template that I kind of created for you. Well, the template that you have that Laura has given you, and then this is just the template for this particular unit. And I think if you're not able to see this, I just switched my screen share. There's a website that I will share with you in the chat.
Oh, thank you, Christine. And what a beautiful other kind of unit to share, which also has important environmental focus as Frederick's, but through a narrative. And this book, A Long Walk to Water, is used a lot with English learners because it has really important, meaningful content, but it's accessible in terms of the language level of the book, is readable by students at a pretty beginner stage of English. And I want to mention too, we're talking about planning in units. We don't tend to give English learners full length novels. We tend to give short pieces. But if you're able to find a longer book, that is another really great way to extend and make a unit longer. Students will remember a book they read more than an article or a short story down the road. And thank you, Christine, for using the template that we're asking all of you to use for Thursday's submission. So that gives you a really good model. And Christine can pop that into the chat, so people can take a look at how she did it. I'm just gonna have, I think, let's see, Jamie maybe, and Galia also share. Maybe Galia, why don't you go next? And then we'll have Jamie go after that.
Okay. So when I was thinking about what to share, I kind of kept going back to the conversations that my group was having in the breakout rooms, and a lot of people expressed frustration around either not having resources, but other people express frustration around what happens like when you're told this is what you have to teach in a textbook and this is like the topics you have to cover. So I wanted to approach it in that way, like how you can still incorporate a lot of the things that we talked about, even when you have a prescribed curriculum. So I'm going to share my screen now. I did a little bit of work with our, the Department of Education had a posting for some teachers to be what's called a virtual content specialist. And so what my role was last year was I took prescribed curriculum. So a lot of high schools, because I'm at the high school level, a lot of high schools have prescribed textbooks that they have to teach students. And so my role as a virtual content specialist was to take these units and adapt them for ENL students or English language students, and take these lessons that were already created and embed additional scaffolds to think about, okay, using this lesson or this project that was given to me, how can I add additional scaffolds? What other activities can I add to help students? And so I had to create the materials for those activities, as well as student-facing videos and teacher videos. And so, like I said, this was adapted from a textbook curriculum. It was originally meant for an ELA. So here, ELA would be like literature, so a literature 9th grade class. And so the essential question for this particular unit was, how can we come together despite our differences? And then at the very end, so it was a 4-week unit, and at the very end of the unit, they were going to have to write a personal narrative. And the prompt for the personal narrative was a time in my life when people came together despite their difference. And so if you kind of think about what Laura mentioned in another session about personal narratives, like that's a really good way to have students produce writing, because they're writing about themselves. And as some of you guys have mentioned, when they write about themselves, it kind of, excites them, motivates them. So at the end, they were going to have to write this personal narrative. And so you can already kind of think about, like in our class today, what are some of the structures they might need to know. They're going to need to know how to write in past tense, because it's a previous memory that they're sharing. And so to kind of ground everything, they read 2 different texts, but the one that I'm going to highlight here is they read an excerpt from a personal narrative, a personal essay by this writer named Is Pbl. And his excerpt was called Unusual Normality. And so Is Pbl, he's a former child soldier from Sierra Leone. And the excerpt that they read talks about when he was adopted. He was adopted by a woman in New York, and him coming to New York, and that process of like, He was this child soldier, and now he is with students that have no idea about his previous lived experiences. And so that's just to kind of give you some context as to their final project, as well as like the core text they considered. And so, like I said, this was like a prescribed curriculum. So in the prescribed curriculum, they would just give them maybe the text and that's it. Maybe they put like some words on the side that they highlight. So I came up with more of the activities similar to what we covered in Laura's class. Like, what do you do to help our students that are learning a language when they're reading a text? So if you remember in that session, we talked about before reading activities, during reading, after reading. And so one of the activities that I created for before reading to help build background and to help them kind of think about what they were going to read was this See, Think, Wonder protocol. We used Jamboard, so I created this Jamboard, and then they had these pictures. And so as we saw in the session, pictures really just like help students are just a great springboard. And you can have students that maybe don't know a lot of English, but they can at least comment like, I see a girl. I see a man behind the girl, so this gives them an in, and then they had to do this collaboratively. So they did it in groups, and then as a group, they had to share out what they wondered about the excerpt or the story they were going to read based on these pictures. And so this incorporates some of, like I said, those pre-reading strategies we talked about, and also because they have to share out with the whole class, it incorporates some of the speaking. This was another activity before reading. So if you notice, the title of the text is Unusual Normality. And so in the prescribed curriculum, it kind of just really quickly said, this is an oxymoron. And so I created an additional activity as a scaffold, like what is an oxymoron? And having students kind of explore the concept of an oxymoron and how like you use, antonyms and how they're two words that are different, like jumbo shrimp, but they go together, and that concept of oxymorons in English and just introducing it to them. And so I made 2 activities. This was all for like remote learning, so everything had to be like things that teachers could just do. So I created this word wall activity. And then I also, if people didn't have access to word wall, I did a Jamboard if people were comfortable with Jamboard. And then Jamboard could also, on Jamboard, you could have students, like if you give certain students a particular oxymoron, then they can, since it's Jamboard lets you include pictures, then they could put 2 pictures and the other students could guess what the oxymoron they were trying to show was. And so that relates to vocabulary and also pre-reading, because they had to also think, okay, after they learned about this concept of oxymorons, why might the title of the text be called Unusual Normality? And so that was like the next step after they explored oxymorons. And then they also looked at videos. Again, this is all like before even reading. They looked at videos that talked a little bit about his life, just to give more context. And we talked about Edpuzzle and taught teachers about Edpuzzle and how it's really great for our students. If you haven't, I think I saw it on another slide that Laura mentioned in a previous session, but it's great because it allows students to kind of stop. Because sometimes we give students like questions, but they don't know exactly where to find the answer to in that video. And Edpuzzle kind of lets you like put like, okay, from here to here, they know that the answer is going to be somewhere there. So it helps give them that extra support. During reading, so instead of just telling them like read this excerpt, one of the activities that I made was using Jamboard to, especially with beginners, maybe they don't know like they don't necessarily have like the language to annotate and give you a complete like completely tell you why they chose this part. So I created this thing with emojis on Jamboard. They could just drag the emoji. So they had to mark 3 details in the paragraph and just put the emoji that best represented the mood and that part of the text. And then this was another collaborative activity. So then with their partner, based on their emojis and on their conversations, why they put that emoji there, then they had to come up with a statement as to what mood they thought the author was trying to convey there. And so that hit reading, speaking, listening, since they were working collaboratively, and then sharing out. And then talking about grammar, like I said, because they're doing this narrative essay at the end, then they would need to know the past tense. And so one of the lessons had them kind of like annotate and observe all of the tenses and like the verbs and how they ended in ED. And so then here's an activity where they were brainstorming for their personal narrative. And so they had to share like what happened, how does this make me feel, what lessons did I learn? And so here I created this video showing them and highlighting how when they answered to make sure it was like in past tense, terrified, frightened, lived. And so here I was sharing my own experience to show them how I would answer that prompt, but also guiding them in terms of like how they should be responding to these questions. And I think that is it. But yeah, I just mainly wanted to kind of showcase how sometimes we're stuck with curriculum that we have no control, but we can still add in those things that we've talked about in class and add in those different modalities, scaffolds to support our students.
Oh, wow, Galia, that's beautiful. Really, really impressive. And I loved how you, you brought in that, you challenged us to remember that even if we have something that we think is very fixed in our curriculum, that we can always infuse it with additional, just almost like variations or twists on some of the activities that we do. And when you have something meaningful as the meat or in the middle of your unit, you can just attach so many different skills to it and approach it in so many different ways. The comments, people are in shock, they're stunned. Let's go to Jamie before we close out tonight. I think Juan, what do you think after Jamie? I'm not sure if Sarah is going to go, but I think we're maybe saturated. So
oh, it's okay. I guess we're all having fun. Please go ahead.
We are. I'm
time.
thinking like I'm not sure about the breakouts after this, but
no breakouts. No time for breakouts.
Yeah.
Tonight,
so how about Jamie? You want to share a little from your unit? And thank you so much, Galia. It's awesome.
Yeah, I actually love saying that because I had to use that unit too, and those were some great ideas.
Oh, good.
But I was also thinking about some of the things that I have been hearing from you, particularly around like your frustrations over, similar to what Galia said, over like lack of resources, lack of support. And so I sometimes have the opportunity to create the units that I want. And then sometimes, like the example I'm going to share, I have to do what is told to me. So in this example, it was, I'll share my screen. It was towards the end of this last school year, and my administration, my principal and assistant principal, wanted the kids to take the Regents exam, which is like a state assessment that students in New York have to take. And they wanted me to prep students for this exam. And they were very like specific. So in this case, I didn't have much choice about what the end task was going to be. And I also didn't have much time. They told me maybe 3 weeks before the test. So this was a really quick unit. But this is an example of what I was prepping the students for. So like, you know, this is what it looks like. It's a little overwhelming. But it's the same sort of essay every time. So with just a couple weeks to go, I just made this quick, so this is a really quick unit. Let me see. And I just pulled together the elements for this slide to show you. It's also using the language that, so some of these things we have to use the same language in our school. So to label the end of unit task, we always start with the question, where is it leading? So at the end of the marking period, we will write a text analysis response, analyzing how a literary device developed a main idea in fish cheeks. So this is the same prompt that students will have to use in their state test. I just picked a different text that I thought the kids might be more into, might be more engaging. So they're practicing the skills they'll do on the state test just with a different text. And then I kept our essential unit, our essential question from the unit we had been working on before I was asked to do this completely different thing. And I made sure I picked a text that fit with what we had been talking about, which was identities. So the essential question was still, how are identities shaped by the stories we tell about ourselves? So again, I was able to pull from things we had been talking about before I was asked to do this extra unit at the end. And then the content and language goals came from the English department. We sat together, we looked at where the students were, and we thought about what we could do in just 3 weeks. We thought about what I could support with the English language learners, and we made these goals and questions together so that students were getting the same thing in their different classes. And this was just this was what I did. So this was like the plan for those 3 weeks. And then here's an example of what the weekly learning objectives look like. There ended up being 3 of them because there were 3 weeks. And since it was online, it was a little, again, I had to follow the rules of my school, right? We had to have, they're very specific about the language and the way things are presented to kids. So I had to ask the question in this way. But I used the skills that the teachers from the English department and I came up with to craft these learning objectives. And then I also put in examples of how we started the unit, giving some background, context. This was the vocabulary we ended up talking about. And then this is what the text looked like when the students eventually worked with it together online. And I'm not the owner of the Google site. I tried to find examples of the student work to show you because they ended up writing some really nice paragraphs at the end, but I couldn't access them. But that's all. This was just, this was a quick 3-week unit that I threw together at the end of the year because I was told I had to. But I still got to I got to pick the text. I got to kind of decide how students would meet the goals and how they would practice the skills. So hopefully that is something you can connect to, because I know you were all mentioning similar struggles.
Yes, the struggles of being told you have to do something or just having really limited resources. And I love the, like Kenya's talking about, just the simplicity and also the, I think bringing in, even if it's a short reading passage or a short video or anything you can find online that exposes students to other ways of being, other cultures. You know, we do love to talk about our own lives, and that's such an important place to start with students, is their own families, their own knowledge base from their lives in the Dominican Republic. But it's important that we learn about other people from far away, and reading and video is such a great way to do that through English. So thank you so much, Jamie. And everyone loves all the beautiful units. For Thursday night, we want to make sure, I'm just going to quickly go to my screen before we wrap up. On my side here, we have our Padlet, and we have a template for you to use here for this last unit, last assignment. So you're going to be prepared for Thursday with a little bit of an idea. It does not have to be something you already did. We encourage you to think new, to think different, to think about maybe a unit you'd like to do next year. And we would love to see any of the ideas you've gotten from some of the sessions we've had together too. And you'll be able to share those with your groups when we get together on Thursday. So we've done a lot of talking, a lot of presenting. You also have been sharing, but Thursday is your night to share with us. So we're going to make sure to give you a good amount of time to share with each other your ideas about units. So we should all walk away with a lot of good materials. So I want to thank everybody for your time and attention. We've been together for 9 sessions. Our 10th is on Thursday, and we look forward to it. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Laura. Now, one thing, I will be sending you the template for the unit tonight to the WhatsApp groups. Keep in mind that by Thursday, you should have the template complete and uploaded to the Padlet so that you can discuss it in your groups on Thursday. So once again, you will be getting the template tonight. You have to complete the whole mini unit, the whole plan for it, upload it to Padlet before Thursday. And then on Thursday, you'll be able to discuss it in all your groups. That's for those who wanted to know how they were going to do it, because some of you have written to me in WhatsApp asking about it. All right, so tonight you'll get the template. I just make sure to publish it in the WhatsApp groups in case you have any issues with Padlet. But Laura will need it ready by Thursday, then you will have a chance to share. Next week, Laura, we will be working precisely again on the project for next year. So on Monday, the co-teachers will be around again in the groups, and we'll have to put together the project and listen to teachers' viewpoints, because we have different realities in this country. I mean, what you can do, I love something I saw tonight in all the co-teachers and yourself. Engagement is a key part of any project that you presented tonight. Student engagement, that is first. And then we have to work on that too at school. And in this country, again, we need to analyze the context more than anything, and how we are going to make every school context feasible for learning English, and what the process will be in terms of involving school management, again, other teachers, the community, and how to engage our students, because we need to understand the situation of English language teaching and learning in the country. Our issue is not only pedagogical. We need to transform the whole school environment in order to get not only the teachers and not only the students involved, but everybody. So again, on Thursday, all of you should have uploaded your template to Padlet, and I'll be publishing it right now. Thank you to all our colleagues from New York State University, Laura, all the co-teachers. This has been great. I know that all of our teachers are impressed and they are loving this experience. And I want to thank our teachers too, because it is their vacation. This morning, I was talking to the officials from INAFOCAM, and they were asking me how things were going. I told them, listen, all the teachers are coming. Most of the teachers are either taking the class or doing it later in YouTube, because many teachers are also traveling and they are connected from other countries now. So congratulations to all of you, and thank you very much. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, co-teachers, and thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you very much.